Whosoever desires constant success must change his conduct with the times. Niccolò Machiavelli. Welcome to the theatre of the mind. Welcome to a realm where the world's noise fades and the internal empire begins. Today, we dismantle the greatest lie ever told about power. Most people look at the man who walks alone and they see a tragedy. They see a defect. They see a broken gear in the social machine. But through the lens of pure, cold strategy, we see something entirely different. We see a master architect building a fortress that no army can breach. Society calls these individuals outcasts. But the truth, the dangerous truth, is that they are the most psychologically formidable forces to ever walk this earth. I have observed a pattern that threatens the very foundation of how human beings organize their lives. Forced socialization is not a sign of health. It is a psychological cage. The individual who keeps no friends is not suffering from a deficit. They have developed a rare and terrifying immunity. They are immune to the most powerful weapon used to control human behavior, the need for validation from the group, the psychological chains that keep most people obedient to collective agreements they never consciously chose. The strategist of solitude cannot be manipulated by social pressure. Why? Because they genuinely do not seek a seat at the table of the mediocre. They have achieved what I call psychological independence. Most people imagine they make their own choices. They are wrong. Most human behavior is synchronized, like a programmed clockwork, with group expectations. People dress alike. They think in echoes. They make choices that feel personal, but are actually just collective patterns they absorbed while sleeping. Think about your own life, for just a moment. What career did you choose because it looked impressive to others? What relationship did you stay in because the alternative would look like failure to your peers? Most people make dozens of these pathetic calculations every single day. They hand the keys of their destiny to invisible judges who never even asked for that power. The strategist exists outside this theatre, not because they are rebelling, but because they never plugged into the power grid in the first place. Their nervous system learned to self-regulate through the cold, clear air of solitude. When other children needed the group's laughter to feel secure, the strategist felt secure in silence. This creates an individual who cannot be threatened with exclusion. And how can you control a man who does not value your inclusion? This is more dangerous than any rebellion. It is a total escape from the invisible prison. The man who walks alone is the ultimate observer. He collects data on human behavior with the precision of a scientist and the cold eye of a grandmaster. While everyone else is busy performing their roles, wearing their masks, and reciting their scripts, the strategist sits in the shadows of the balcony and watches the machinery work. He sees the lies people tell themselves to survive the day. He sees the contradictions between the virtue they preach and the venom they act upon. He recognizes the patterns that repeat across every social system, every office, every family. While others are busy performing, the strategist is learning. And once you see how the game is rigged, you can no longer pretend to be a player. Once you notice the patterns, you cannot unsee the strings. This knowledge becomes a form of isolation, because speaking the truth threatens the collective lies that keep the group functioning. Every group has unspoken rules about what must be ignored. The family that ignores the father's rot, the workplace that bows to the toxic tyrant, the circle of friends that pretends not to notice the parasite in their midst. These agreements keep the group stable, but they require your total participation in the lie. The strategist who points out the obvious is not the problem because he is wrong. He is the problem because he broke the agreement of silence. Do not confuse this state with the hollow ache of loneliness. Loneliness is a defect, a state of craving connection you cannot achieve. The lonely man scrolls through his glass screen, feeling the sting of exclusion. He tolerates disrespect because having bad company feels better than the void of the mirror. But solitude, true strategic solitude, is a superpower. It is a chosen state of sovereignty. It is when your internal signal finally stops processing the static of everyone else's expectations. In the silence, you discover what you actually think, not what you were trained to think by a television screen or a peer group. You learn what you genuinely desire. The lonely person is broken by the void. The strategist is strengthened by it. When a master of solitude is forced into social circles, they do not feel connection. They feel interference, like a high-definition signal being corrupted by white noise. The small talk that others use to build rapport registers as meaningless, irritating sound. The social rituals that others find comforting feel like an elaborate, expensive waste of life force. This is not a sickness. This is a different configuration of the human spirit. It is a spirit that processes social input as noise rather than nourishment. Proceeding to chunk 2. I will continue with the ruthless, human-paced delivery, focusing on the Machiavellian shadow and the concept of strategic integration. Chunk 2. The integration of the darker self. Approximate length, approximately 7,800 characters. The sovereign strategy. The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. Niccolò Machiavelli. Listen closely, for we are entering the deeper layers of the fortress. We are moving past the gates of solitude and into the armory of the self. I have observed that the strategist, the one who truly walks alone, is often the only one brave enough to face their own internal darkness. In the science of the mind, we call this the shadow. These are the hidden chambers of your character, the parts of yourself that society has commanded you to deny, to suppress, and to project onto others. Most people spend their entire frantic lives running away from this shadow. They hide in the safety of groups so they can point their fingers at the world and say, "That is where the evil lives. That is where the weakness is. It is in them, but never in me." The group provides an endless supply of mirrors for shadow projection. You can stay comfortably blind to your own capacity for cruelty. By obsessing over the cruelty of others, you can avoid examining your own deep dishonesty. By judging the lies of your neighbor, you can deny your own paralyzing insecurities. By mocking the person who stands next to you, the social circle becomes a hall of mirrors where everyone throws their darkness onto everyone else. And in that theater, no one ever has to face the truth of their own soul. The strategist does not have this luxury, and that is his greatest advantage. When you spend significant, disciplined time in total solitude, you eventually meet every Ost you have been running from. You meet your capacity for coldness. You meet your deep selfishness. You face your absolute fears and your most pathetic weaknesses. Everything the group taught you was unacceptable to acknowledge is now standing right in front of you. In the silence of the room, there is no one else to blame. There is no one else to compare yourself to. There is no distraction from your own psychological reality. I have found that the man who successfully integrates his shadow becomes exponentially stronger than the man who hides in the crowd. Why? Because once you have faced your own darkness and survived the encounter, you are no longer afraid of it. You are no longer controlled by the primitive fear of having your dark side exposed. You become immune to shame as a control mechanism. You have already looked at the worst parts of your nature, and you have decided that you can live with them. You have decided that you can rule over them. This acceptance creates an unshakable psychological stability. The man who has integrated his shadow knows he is capable of selfishness. So, when someone accuses him of being selfish, the accusation does not destroy him. It does not even graze him. He knows he is capable of cruelty. So, recognizing a moment of cruelty in himself does not shatter his self-image into pieces. He has accepted his full humanity, the light and the dark, bound together in one iron frame. This paradox makes him less dangerous to himself, but far more dangerous to his enemies. Because he is conscious of his capacity for harm, he can choose his strikes with cold, surgical precision. This integration is what leads to psychological sovereignty. The strategist who has faced his darkness cannot be manipulated through threats of exposure. He already knows what he is capable of doing. He has already accepted the price of his own nature. This makes him unblackmailable. This makes him unshameable. This makes him entirely uncontrollable. Through the normal social levers that keep the masses obedient. I documented this process within my own exile. When the world turned its back and the halls of power were closed to me, I entered the solitude of the study. I faced the contents of the mind that would have destroyed a lesser man. I confronted parts of myself that contradicted everything I wanted to believe about my own virtue. But I did not run from the mirror. I studied the reflection. I integrated the data. I emerged from that solitude, fundamentally changed, no longer dependent on external validation, no longer afraid of the internal storm, psychologically complete, in a way the performing masses will never comprehend. This shadow work, this internal confrontation, is what produces the most profound strategic insights in history. It is where the concepts that revolutionize the world are born, in the territory where no one else can navigate with you. The development of a fully individuated self is the ultimate act of rebellion. It is a self capable of thinking its own thoughts, a self capable of feeling its own raw emotions, a self capable of living according to its own non-negotiable values. The world needs these individuals, not because they are better, but because they see what the blinded crowd cannot see. They ask the questions the group is programmed to fear. They live out possibilities that others are too controlled to even imagine. If you find yourself walking the path of the loner, understand this: you are not failure to launch. You are performing a high-level psychological evolution. Solitude forces the shadow into the light. Shadow integration creates sovereignty, and sovereignty threatens every single system built on controlling people through shame. This is why the world will try to fix you. This is why the crowd will try to heal your isolation. They are not worried about your happiness. They are terrified of your freedom. Because a man who cannot be shamed is a man who can dismantle a kingdom with a single word. The sovereign strategy. It is much safer to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Niccolò Machiavelli. Listen to the sound of the chains breaking. We are reaching the point of no return, the moment when the strategist, through the fires of solitude, achieves a state of total clarity. Most people spend their existence terrified of a breakdown. They fear the moment their social life collapses. They fear the day they are finally cast out by the group. But for the strategist, this is not a breakdown. It is a breakthrough. I call this the snap. It is not a psychological failure. It is the moment of absolute crystalline clarity where the individual decides to act because they no longer need the group's permission to exist. They reach a height where they can make decisions that terrify the collective. They can walk away from toxic systems without a single backward glance. They can expose truths without a shred of concern for the social fallout. They can act on their own ironclad values, even when those values contradict every expectation of the masses. Think of the whistleblowers who sacrifice a comfortable career to expose the rot of a corrupt empire. Think of the truth-tellers who risk their entire reputation to name the monster that everyone knows is in the room, but no one will speak of. Think of the man who walks away from a prestigious position simply because the work contradicts his internal code. These are the individuals who choose integrity over inclusion. They choose truth over safety. They choose the sovereign path, even when the path is covered in thorns. And how does the group respond? The group punishes these actions with primitive ferocity, because these individuals threaten the collective agreements that keep the entire system stable. Organizations will try to exile the truth-teller. Social circles will try to ostracize the one who sees too much. Families will try to scapegoat the member who refuses to maintain the family lie. But here is the Machiavellian secret. The strategist who has achieved true sovereignty cannot be controlled by punishment that relies on social pain. Exclusion does not hurt. When you never valued inclusion, shame does not work. When you have already mastered your own shadow, damage to your reputation means nothing. When you never derived your identity from the applause of fools. This is what makes the strategist dangerous, not because they desire to cause harm, but because they are free. Freedom is the ultimate threat to any system built on the manipulation of the masses. A person who cannot be shamed, a person who cannot be coerced into compliance, is a person who can dismantle an entire power structure simply by refusing to play the game. They can say no to opportunities that everyone else is scrambling to grab. They can walk away from relationships that everyone else tolerates out of fear of the void. They can question the sacred beliefs that everyone else defends without a single moment of critical thought. I have spent decades studying this phenomenon of power, and the conclusion is one that makes the modern social expert very uncomfortable. The individual who keeps no friends is not broken. They are evolved. They represent what human consciousness can become when it develops outside the age of collective programming. They are not missing something that the masses have. They are accessing something that most people will never have the courage to find. Most people are running software that they downloaded from their culture without ever examining the code. They have borrowed beliefs about what success means. They have inherited assumptions about what relationships should look like. They follow rules about which emotions are acceptable to show. They follow a script for how a life is supposed to unfold. All of this programming runs in the background of their minds, determining their choices. Their choices feel personal, but they are actually just collective patterns, repeated across millions of identical lives. The strategist is the one who rejected the download. He is the one who wrote his own operating system. This makes him incompatible with the standard social infrastructure, but it also makes him capable of innovations that groupthink could never produce because he is not constrained by collective agreements. He can see solutions that others literally cannot imagine because he is not invested in maintaining the status quo. He can advocate for changes that others are too terrified to mention. History's greatest breakthroughs did not come from the committee. They came from the solitary, the artist who worked in isolation for a decade before the world saw the light, the scientist who pursued a question that everyone else dismissed as impossible, the philosopher who thought the thoughts that no one else wanted to hear, the inventor who built the prototype in a lonely workshop, while the neighbors called him a madman. These individuals could see possibilities that the crowd made invisible because they weren't constrained by the need to be liked. They weren't limited by the need to be normal. The legacy of the strategist is not loneliness, it is liberation, not just for themselves, but for every soul who witnesses a man living according to his own values, rather than the expectations of the herd. Every loner who achieves this sovereignty proves that it is possible to survive. They prove that you can exist outside the group. They prove that you can face your shadow and emerge as a king. They prove that freedom from collective control is achievable if you are willing to pay the price of admission, the price of solitude. I understood this deeply because I lived it. When my break with the powers of Florence left me isolated, I did not beg for re-entry. When my colleagues dismissed my visions, I did not change my tone to please them. I navigated territories of the mind where no one else could follow, and that solitude produced the insights that still shake the world 5 centuries later. The strategist who keeps no friends is not avoiding connection. They are protecting their consciousness. They are guarding their signal from the static of the masses so they can access truths that collective participation makes invisible. They are not failing at relationships. They are succeeding at the most difficult task of all, the development of a fully individuated, fully sovereign self. Nature has created men in such a fashion that they can desire everything, but cannot attain everything. Thus, their fortune is always changing. Niccolò Machiavelli. The world is loud, but it is empty. To the strategist, most social interaction is not a bridge, it is a barrier. I have observed that many confuse the man of solitude with one who is simply antisocial. This is a grave error in judgment. The strategist does not hate people, he simply refuses to be fed by the scraps of their shallow validation. He masses find nourishment in the group. They thrive on the constant exchange of trivialities. But to the refined mind, this input is nothing more than noise. It is a static that disrupts the clear signal of the individual spirit. In Surrealism, we understand that perception is a fine-tuned instrument, and every time you engage in meaningless social theater, you dull the blade of your own awareness. Think about the small talk that dominates the lives of ordinary men. It is a ritual of safety. It is a way to prove that they are harmless to the group. They discuss the weather, the sports, the latest gossip from the digital feed. They use sound to fill the void, because the void of silence terrifies them. To the strategist, this registers as a profound waste of life force. It is like trying to hear a symphony while standing in the middle of a construction site. When the master of solitude enters a crowded room, he does not feel included, he feels interference. His nervous system is configured differently. It does not seek the warmth of the herd, it seeks the clarity of the objective. He watches the social rituals that others find so comforting, and he sees them as elaborate, expensive masks. He sees the performance of interest in topics that do not matter. He sees the forced laughter that buys social points. He sees the subtle, desperate bids for attention that everyone else pretends not to notice. This dual processing is what makes socialization so exhausting for the strategist. He is not just hearing the words, he is tracking the subtext. He is watching the gap between what people say and the authentic emotions that are bleeding through their clumsy performances. He is seeing the lies, the contradictions, and the hidden agendas. This is why solitude is not a preference, it is a strategic necessity. It is the only environment where the nervous system can recover. From the sensory overload of human deception, the world needs you to believe that isolation is a sickness. They need you to feel guilty for wanting to be alone. They use the word introvert as if it were a diagnosis that needs a cure, but I tell you, your discomfort in social situations is not anxiety. It is your internal compass. It is your nervous system telling you that performing a false self to please a room full of strangers is more damaging than being alone with your authentic self. The strategist does not suffer from unwanted isolation. He enjoys sovereign solitude. This is a state where you finally have access to your own consciousness, without the interference of collective expectations. It is where you discover what you actually believe, not what you have been programmed to repeat. It is where you learn what you genuinely enjoy, not what you are supposed to enjoy to stay relevant. The group is a factory of clones. Solitude is the laboratory of the original. In the quiet, the strategist becomes an alchemist. He takes the raw data of his observations, and he transmutes them into wisdom. He takes the overwhelm of the world and turns it into clarity. Most people are terrified of their own thoughts. They keep the television on, the music playing, the phone scrolling. They are afraid that if the noise stops, they will have to face the person in the mirror. The strategist welcomes the silence. He knows that silence is the only place where the truth can be heard. He knows that in the void, he is not alone. He is with the only person who will ever truly have his back, himself. This internal coherence is what makes him so formidable. He is not seeking a higher self in the clouds. He is building a practical self in the trenches of his own mind. He is learning his own signals. He is trusting his own intuition. He is developing a level of social intelligence that exceeds what most people achieve in 3 lifetimes. But he develops it as an observer, not a participant. Once you see how the social game is played, you cannot return to the board as a pawn. You cannot unsee the patterns of manipulation. You cannot unhear the hollow resonance of a lie. This knowledge makes participation in the group almost impossible, but it makes your influence over the world almost limitless. You are no longer a part of the machine. You are the one who knows where the gears are located. You are the one who knows which lever to pull. You move with the quiet, dangerous grace of a man who knows exactly who he is and what he is capable of. If you are someone who finds yourself drained by the noise, understand that you are not broken. You are simply calibrated for something higher. Your solitude is not a problem to be solved. It is a fortress to be protected. It is where you prepare your next move. It is where you forge the weapon that will eventually change the world. Men are so simple and so much moved by their present needs that he who deceives will always find someone who will let himself be deceived. Niccolò Machiavelli. The world is a stage, but for the strategist, it is a laboratory. I have watched the masses perform their social duties for decades. They wear their masks so tightly that the skin of their true self begins to rot underneath. They believe they are being authentic. They believe their smiles are real, their handshakes are honest, and their values are their own. But the strategist, sitting in the quiet corner of his own mind, sees the strings. He sees the machinery of deception. Every group has an unspoken agreement to ignore the obvious. It is a collective denial, a shared hallucination that keeps the group from collapsing into the truth. The family that pretends the patriarch is a saint while he poisons the well of their home. The corporation that preaches innovation while it crushes every original thought that dares to breathe. The circle of friends that maintains a vibe of positivity while harboring a parasite who feeds on their insecurities. The strategist sees these rules clearly, and he finds them absurd. Most people are terrified of the social void. They would rather be lied to by a group than be told the truth by themselves. They participate in the social theater because they fear the silence that follows the curtain call. But you, the one who walks alone, you have realized that the theater is a prison. You have stopped trying to fix the play. You have simply stopped being an actor in it. This observational position gives you access to truths that make participation impossible. Once you see the mechanical nature of human behavior, you cannot return to being a part of the machine. You notice that the person preaching family values is the same one seeking a tawdry escape in the shadows. You see that the supportive friend is the one who subtly, surgically, undermines your success when the group is watching. You recognize that the smiling colleague is the one holding the knife behind their back during the meeting. These observations are not cynicism, they are pattern recognition. It is perception unfiltered by the desperate need to maintain social harmony. In Surrealism, we understand that most people are not thinking, they are synchronizing. They are like schools of fish or flocks of birds. They move in unison, not because they have a shared goal, but because they are terrified of being the one who moves differently. The strategist is the one who stops swimming. He lets the current of the masses rush past him, and as they swim by, he studies their scales. He notes their speed. He identifies the leaders and the stragglers. He becomes a dangerous observer. He is not looking for friendship. He is looking for intelligence. He knows that information is the only currency that never loses its value. He knows that while others are busy performing, he is busy accumulating the power of the truth. There is a specific kind of intelligence that only develops in the observer. It is a social IQ that exceeds anything a socialite could ever dream of. But it is developed as a ghost in the system. The strategist can move through a room, speak the words, shake the hands, and leave without ever truly being there. He wears a strategic mask, not to deceive himself, but to protect his internal sovereign territory. He knows that to show your true face to the herd is to invite their judgment, their fear, and their inevitable attempt to correct you. So, he plays the role. He gives them the social graces they crave. He gives them the small talk they need to feel safe. But inside, his citadel is locked. His thoughts are his own. His judgment is uncorrupted. He is like a spy in an enemy camp. He speaks the language, he follows the customs, but his loyalty is to the emperor in the mirror. This is what Jung, and now Machiavelli, call the individuation process. It is the journey of becoming a fully realized, fully separate human being. It is the most difficult journey a soul can take, because every step you take toward your authentic self is a step away from the comfort of the group. The world will try to punish you for this. They will call you arrogant. They will call you distant. They will call you cold, but they are only projecting their own fear of the void onto you. They cannot understand a man who does not need their applause to feel worthy. They cannot comprehend a woman who does not need their permission to be powerful. You are the sovereign of the surreal. You see the world for what it is, a collection of moving parts, a dance of shadows, a theater of the absurd. And because you see the machinery, you are the only one who can truly repair it, or, if necessary, dismantle it. The loner who has faced his darkness, who has integrated his shadow, who has mastered the mask, he is the only one who can walk away from the fire without the smell of smoke on his clothes. If you feel like an outsider in your own life, understand that you have been granted a strategic gift. Your isolation is your observation deck. The view from the heights is always clearer than the view from the mosh pit. Do not trade your vision for their inclusion. Do not trade your sovereignty for their safety. The world belongs to the one who can see it without being consumed by it. The machinery is running, but you are the one with your hand on the power switch. Proceeding to Chunk 6. In this section, we explore the Machiavellian snap, the definitive psychological break from the collective. This is the moment where the strategist realizes that social exclusion is not a punishment, but a liberation. We delve into how to walk away from toxic systems with absolute chilling finality. Chunk 6, the snap of absolute sovereignty. Approximate length, approximately 7,800 characters. The sovereign strategy. I'm not interested in preserving the status quo. I want to overthrow it. Niccolò Machiavelli. The moment of transformation is often mistaken for a moment of madness, but in Surrealism, we are Recognize it as the birth of a king. Most human beings live their entire lives in a state of quiet, desperate paralysis. They stay in careers that drain their spirit because they fear the judgment of the unsuccessful. They remain in toxic families because they fear the label of the betrayer. They cling to hollow friendships because they fear the silence of the Saturday night. They are held captive by 1,000 tiny, invisible threads of social expectation. But then, for the strategist, there comes the snap. It is not a breakdown of the mind. It is a breakdown of the cage. It is the precise second when you realize, with absolute, terrifying clarity, that the opinions of the group have zero weight in the vacuum of your soul. It is the realization that the social consequences you have feared your entire life are nothing more than shadows on a wall. They have no teeth, they have no claws, they have no power, except the power you have foolishly granted them. When the strategist snaps, he does not go insane, he goes sovereign. He reaches a psychological height where he can make decisions that appear incomprehensible to the masses. He can walk away from a prestigious position without an explanation. He can cut off a decade-long relationship without an apology. He can speak a truth that destroys a comfortable lie without a hint of regret. The group watches this, and they are horrified. They call him cold, they call him heartless, they call him unstable. But what they are actually seeing is a man who has finally integrated his shadow and realized that he no longer needs their validation to breathe. He has achieved the ultimate Machiavellian advantage. He is unblackmailable. How can you threaten a man with exclusion when he has found paradise in his own solitude? How can you shame a man who has already looked at his own internal darkness and called it by its true name? How can you control a man who does not seek your applause? This is where the research into the mind becomes truly dangerous to the establishment. The strategist who has achieved this level of clarity can dismantle entire power structures simply by refusing to participate. He becomes the whistleblower of reality. He sees the toxic manager that everyone else is bowing to, and he refuses to lower his head. He sees the scapegoat in the family that everyone else is mocking, and he refuses to join the laughter. He sees the corruption in the organization that everyone else is ignoring, and he names it in the middle of the crowded hall. He is the one who breaks the collective denial agreements that keep groups functioning, and the group will try to destroy him for it. They will try to exile him. They will try to smear his reputation. They will try to make him the villain of their story. But the strategist, standing in the fortress of his own mind, only smiles. He knows that exile is an upgrade. He knows that reputation is a chain. And he knows that being the villain in a den of liars is the highest honor a man can receive. The truth that Machiavelli understood, and that society tries to hide, is that freedom is contagious. Every time a strategist walks away from a toxic system, he creates a rip in the social fabric. He shows everyone else who is still trapped that the doors are actually unlocked. He proves that you can survive the social death. He proves that you can face the void and emerge stronger, sharper, and more potent than you ever were inside the herd. This is why the world is so terrified of the loner, not because the loner is evil, but because the loner is proof that the rules are optional, proof that the validation is a scam, proof that the group is just a collection of people who are too afraid to be alone with themselves. In the world of Surrealism, we do not seek to be understood by the masses. We seek to be effective. And the most effective person in any room is the one who is willing to walk out of it and never look back. The snap is your graduation from the school of the masses. It is when you stop asking, how do I fit in? And you start asking, how do I dominate my own territory? It is the moment you stop caring about the story they tell about you, and you start writing the history you will leave behind. Most people spend their lives building a resume for the group. The strategist spends his life building a monolith for himself. He is not trying to win the game. He has realized that the only way to win is to stop playing. And when you stop playing, you become the house. You become the one who sets the terms. You become the one who controls the gravity of the situation. If you feel the snap coming, do not fight it. Do not try to repair your connection to the group. Do not try to explain your logic to the illogical. Simply let it break. Let the bridge burn. Let the noise fade into the distance. Step into the cold, clear air of your own sovereignty. You will find that the void is not empty. It is full of your own power. It is full of your own truth. It is full of the authentic self that has been waiting for you to stop performing, so it can finally begin to lead. The snap is not the end of your life. It is the end of your performance and the beginning of your rule. Where the willingness is great, the difficulties cannot be great. Niccolò Machiavelli. We have traveled through the fires of the shadow. We have heard the snap of the broken cage. Now, we learn to walk as a king in a world of ghosts. The final truth I must impart to you is that the path of the strategist is not a destination. It is a permanent state of perception training. In Surrealism, we do not just survive solitude, we use it as a laboratory to perfect the art of the alchemist. An alchemist is one who can take the lead of common human experience and transmute it into the gold of strategic mastery. Most people are overwhelmed by the world. They feel too much. They care too much. They react too fast. They are like open circuits, being fried by the high-voltage static of everyone else's trauma and expectations. But the strategist has learned to install a psychological transformer. He takes the overwhelm of the masses, and he processes it into clarity. He takes the noise of social pressure, and he converts it into intelligence. He takes the pain of isolation, and he burns it as fuel for his own ambition. You must understand that your ability to walk alone is not a defect to be cured by social skills. It is a metabolic advantage. Your nervous system has evolved to find nourishment in the void, where others find only starvation. While the masses are starving for the junk food of likes, follows, and superficial nods of approval, the strategist is feasting on the deep truths of human nature. He is learning how the human psyche actually functions, not how the textbooks say it should function. He is mastering the internal signals of his own body. He knows the difference between the fear of the shadow and the warning of the intuition. He knows when to hold his ground and when to vanish like a ghost. The world will tell you that you are missing out. They will try to lure you back into the mosh pit with promises of belonging, but the strategist knows that belonging is just another word. For compliance, to belong to a group, you must agree to stop seeing what the group ignores. To belong to a system, you must agree to stop questioning the system's contradictions. To belong to a family lie, you must agree to bury your own integrity. The price of belonging is your vision. The price of sovereignty is your solitude. And to the alchemist of the mind, that is a bargain he will make every single day of his life. If you are someone who keeps no friends, if you are someone who finds the small talk of the world to be a form of torture, listen to me carefully. You are the hope of the future. You are the one who is not running the collective code. You are the one who can see the cliff, while the herd is still galloping toward it in a frenzy of positivity. You are the one who can name the rot, while the leaders are still busy painting over it. The world does not need more team players. It needs more sovereign individuals. It needs people who can stand in a room full of shouting voices and remain perfectly, chillingly silent. It needs people who can lose everything and realize that they haven't lost anything that actually mattered. It needs people who have faced their own internal darkness and realize that they are their own greatest ally. This is the alchemist's path. It is a path of boundaries. It is a path of drills. It is a path of relentless self-examination. In our work at Surrealism, we provide the maps for this journey. We offer the perception training required to turn your sensitivity into a weapon. We teach you how to build the Machiavellian walls that protect your consciousness from the interference of the masses. We show you how to integrate your shadow until you are no longer a victim of your own nature, but the commander of it. Your life is not a tragedy of isolation. It is a masterpiece of individuation. You are not broken. You are upgraded. You are not lonely. You are free. The machinery of the world is designed to crush the individual. It uses shame. It uses guilt. It uses the fear of the void to keep you in line. But you, the one who has snapped the chains, you are the ghost in that machine. You move through the gears without being touched. You see the power switches that everyone else is programmed to ignore. You are the only one who can truly change the game, because you are the only one who is no longer playing it. Go forward with your head high. Walk into the silence with confidence. Face your shadow with a smile, for you have discovered the dangerous truth that Machiavelli and the masters of the mind always knew. The man who needs nothing from the group is the only one who can lead it. The king is not the one with the most friends. The king is the one who can stand alone and not tremble. Welcome to your own empire. Welcome to Surrealism. Stay sovereign.